Hey everybody, what is going on? It is Brian. Welcome back to the channel. Again, today we're not doing a review video, but I had a really interesting topic I thought about with some of the barrel picks that we've been on and have recently gotten bottles in, and several of the barrel picks that I'm going to be doing. I thought it might be interesting to talk about what it is that I personally look for when doing a barrel pick. Now, this is to be said, this is not global, this is not what everybody does, and I know there's lots of rhymes and reasons for what people look for when they're purchasing a barrel pick. Sometimes you might be with a group or a store, and they have a very specific flavor profile that their customers like, or a flavor profile that they're after, and so those sorts of things kind of confine a little bit, and they're looking for those specific pockets. I know there's other groups too that'll go, and if there's stuff with various age statements, they'll look for the things that might sell the best. They might have the higher age, the higher proof. I'll go ahead and say this right away. Proof is one of those things that I feel like I don't really look for when I'm doing a barrel pick. Now, that could be for several reasons. It could be because you're doing a pick that's going to be proofed down, or it could just be that, I don't really care what the proof ends up being. All that I care about is that it tastes good in the end. And I think that's everyone's goal. Every time they're on a barrel pick, the common goal is to find the best barrel that's there that day. Now, I do want to break that down a little bit. I want to go ahead and dispel, at least to me, I don't necessarily think that the end goal is always to find only the best barrel that's there that day. I think that you can have some thoughts in your head, you can have some other examples that you've tried, and try and find something that's a little bit more than just the best barrel that's there that day. For me specifically, I know that a lot of times Weller 107 picks are things that are better as the staple product to me. The Shelfer 107 than a lot of the barrel picks I have. Now, why is that? I'm not exactly sure. But all that to be said, that just because it's a barrel pick doesn't necessarily mean that it's better. It means it's different. It means it's a single barrel. It means that it's one sliver of expression that the whiskey can have. So let's go ahead and break down some of the things that I do look for when it comes to a barrel pick. If you haven't already, jump down below, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I'd love to know that I'm able to continue to bring content that you're interested in hearing on the channel. One of the first things that I really like to look at when it comes to the samples is the color. Now, while I like to look at the color, this is not always going to be the determining factor. It probably doesn't always mean that something is older. But in the case of things like maybe Willet, Four Roses, some of these products, it might indicate that it's an older product. But color is still interesting because every time you pour something into a glass, somebody's going to look at it. And while we're in a little bit of a bubble, every time you're picking, you're picking from a distillery and you're insular. And you take it once it's bottled to an environment that is not. And so there's always a multitude of things that it can be compared to. And that's why I think color is just one of those things that stands out, whether you're at the pick or not. If it stands out in the flight from the pick, it's more likely it's going to stand out from other samples as well. I tend to find sometimes too that color indicates the richness of the glass. I'll move it around a little bit in the glass and I'll try and see what the legs look like, and whether they're slow or long, if they're thick, if they're really thin. Again, not always an indicator, they're not always the same, but a lot of times when I look at those two things, they seem to go hand in hand. Another thing that I look for is on the nose. Now, I will go ahead and say this as well. What happens on the nose is not necessarily a deal breaker for me, and I say that because while I do want something that has the whole package, it has a great nose, it has a great palate, it has a great finish, I also know that I'm not going to sit and nose the bourbon the whole night. I'm going to drink it also. But it makes it a better experience if I can, in between my sips, sit down and have a really great nose, have a really great product that I'm sipping. So I do like to look to see if there are a lot of aromatics on the nose. Now, I will also mention there are several things that I could be looking for. I don't think, given specific applications, there's anything wrong with a one-trick pony, something that does one flavor really well. However, I'm personally one who will look for complexity, and you'll hear me mention it a couple times. When it comes to the nose, I think that means that every time I revisit the nose, there's something else there. There's not only a lot of flavors, there's a lot of layers to unpack, but it seems to morph and change the more that I come to it. And those sorts of things keep me engaged with the pour, keep me interesting with it. Whether it's sweet or it's spicy, that's not really particular to me. I just like to usually look to see if it has complexity, if it catches my nose, if it is one of those things that smells rich. And I know that's hard to just say because that's something you generally determine on the palate. But if I can nose it, and if you go back to look at some of my reviews, you'll know that I'll mention something that seems like it's going to be exciting. It seems like it's going to draw me into the pour. And if I can find that in something that I'm trying, then that's a win. When we move to the palate, again, we revisit complexity. I feel like I might be a guy who does like a little bit of the sweeter side than the spice side. However, all that goes out the window. It usually comes down to complexity and layers of pour. Again, I'll drink something that has 1 dimension, 2 dimension. There are a couple flavors that I feel like maybe some finished products, they just do one sort of lane of flavor, and it's good, but it's not very complex. And there's other finished products and straight products that have a lot going on. Complexity is a really big deal to me. Probably the 2 main things for me would be complexity, and that's something when I'm tasting it, and then richness or the mouthfeel. That's something that's really important to me too. I like a lot of viscosity. I want it to seem rich. That doesn't mean it has to be big and spicy and bruising. It just means that it's coating, that it fills the mouth. And I say that because I've tried so much whiskey, various proofs. It doesn't have to be below 100 proof, but it just tastes thin. It just tastes light. It just sits on the palate and then it leaves. I want something that you can chew on. I want something that you move around and it has depth, it has thickness. That's something that I look for. You combine that with complexity, layers of flavor, something that evolves, something that changes from time to time, you have got yourself set up to have a really good palate. Let's move to the finish. Now, the finish is something that I feel like most of the time I can get something with a good nose. I can get something, maybe it's rich, it has good viscosity, maybe it's complex. I feel like a lot of times things fall apart in the finish. Again, the finish could be dry, it could be short, it could be long, it could be mouth-wetting and just linger with tons of flavor. That's not incredibly important to me. I do like something that has a long linger. King of Kentucky, again, is one of those things where I feel like you just sit on it and you taste it for minutes to go by. And there's other things that I've tasted that I like that as well. And that is something that really wins me over when it comes to looking for a barrel in a barrel pick. However, it's not the only thing. I've had several that have kind of dry or short finishes, maybe a really spicy finish, just depending on what the whiskey is. It can really come together for a full package. Let me break down a couple examples that might make this a little bit better. When we went to the Middle West Spirits recently, we were dealing with some kind of younger whiskey. This is in like the 3-4 year range. And so what I mainly look for as an overall is I want to find something that doesn't taste youthful. And I want to find something that has pleasing notes that stand out from what you'd expect from younger whiskey. The same sort of thing applies at Starlight. I was a little less discerning maybe the first couple of times I went there, and a bit more discerning the last time that Drew and I went there. And we would try some finished products. We would try some of the straight bourbon, some of the rye, and we would be able to quickly get a glimpse. Does this hit on some of the things we're looking for? Is it immediately too young or not? Aside from the general tells of what you're looking for, nose and body, I check for notes of youthfulness, especially in the day and age where we have a lot of picks that are coming in younger. I want to make sure that it doesn't have an overabundance of youthful characteristic. This could come off as being too cinnamony. This could come off as being too grainy or something that it feels like it's something that you can taste, that it has a granularity to it or a graininess to it. There's things that taste young. They taste maybe a little bit hot. They taste like they're not quite ready yet. And that's something that I look for, so to make sure that I try and avoid picking. Transition maybe to Four Roses. So when I did a pick at Four Roses, this is an example where I don't go after just what tastes iconically Four Roses. And honestly is an example where I didn't even pick necessarily something that struck me in terms of all the big flavor. Another thing that I look for when I'm on a barrel pick is it something that's off profile? You have to imagine that a ton of different groups, a ton of different stores, they're gonna all be picking from the same brands. And while some people wanna go down the lane of find what's the best representation of this brand, others wanna go down and say, we have a flavor profile that we hit. Maybe we get decadent. Maybe we get big and spicy. Maybe we get things that remind us of XYZ. Some people will look for barrel picks that are just off. They're just different. They're just quirky. But I love the uniqueness of having maybe some Elijah Craig barrel proofs and one is a little bit off profile. Maybe you have one that's really creamy and nutty. One's a little bit spicy or nutty. And then you have one super fruity, rock candy, almost like a Buffalo Trace product. That's enjoyable when you like drinking Elijah Craig barrel proofs and you have multiple to choose from. Same that could be said for Knob Creek, Russell's Reserve, barrels that you see out there a whole lot. A Knob Creek pick specifically that a group that I was a part of did was really, really smoky. It smelled like smoked barbecue, which is incredibly unique compared to the other kind of spicy, nutty bombs that most of them can be. Back to the Four Roses. The Four Roses barrel pick that we did, it was not necessarily the spice-driven one that I really liked or the sweet forward one that I really liked. We had a quirky one that was dry on the palate. It was unique. It was a little leathery in the aroma, and it reminded us of pipe tobacco or just dry tobacco. And we kind of leaned into that, and that's the one that we ended up picking up. It was just a unique barrel, which I think also has its place. In that setting, maybe it wasn't the best barrel. In an outside setting, maybe it's not the best pick that you have in a night, but they have unique stories. They're attached to the picks, or maybe they're attached to some memories that someone specifically has. Maybe it tastes just like someone's grandma's cherry pie recipe. Those are things to remember, and they're things that connect us all when we talk about them. Now, don't get me wrong, there's several picks. Bullet, for example, maybe Willet, Driftless Glen. There are times where we have gone in and we've just looked for the best barrel that they have, or we pick something that just unanimously we agree on having very, very nice flavors to it. Sometimes I don't even think about where I'm picking or what it is that I'm picking. I'm just tasting and trying to figure out how many of the boxes does it check off. I will definitely say that the Driftless Glen picks that we recently did, I was not necessarily planning on us coming away with a rye, let alone a smaller barrel rye, let alone one that was so unique and so interesting. If you haven't heard me talk on the live streams about it before, we haven't released it yet, but it's got this peachy mint julep profile. It's very intense, it's candied, but it has some playful mint notes to it. It's great, it's delicious, but it's not what I expected to walk away with. It's definitely unlike the previous ryes that we had tried, the normal size barrel ryes that we had tried, and it was a welcome surprise to walk into. Willet's an interesting one that I've been able to do because you got to just taste so many things, so many different types of recipes, profiles. Maybe not all distilleries have that many, Starlight will and a couple of other places as well, but Willet has several different mash bills. So you could be trying low rye, high rye. You could be trying a low entry proof, high corn. You could be trying their high rye, low corn, bourbons, a number of things. And so you try a multitude of things. And with that, it's hard to determine what's the best thing that you're trying because they're all in different categories of that. And so for that, you really have to hone into some of the things that I mentioned. Does it not have some of the things that you're not looking for? And does it score high in the things that you are looking for? This is a little bit all over the place, a little bit scatterbrained, but I thought maybe for some of you would be interested to see what it is that I look for. What do I think about when I go into doing a barrel pick and what I'm hoping as an outcome for what is in the bottle when I bring it back. Again, everyone's a little bit different. I'd love to hear from you down below in the comments. Message about what it is that you look for specifically when you're going to do a barrel pick. If you're going to pick up a barrel pick that's on the shelf, what are you hoping that it has as some characteristics? Now I have to know too, I know that when I'm going to do the barrel pick, that when it comes back and it's a in the multitude of all different types of barrels that it can have, it's immediately going to lose its loudness that it might have. And that's why I think it's really crucial. Again, if you find some things that you really look for in a pour, something that you really look for and something that you're gonna lean towards and go to and drink every day, that's why I find those things important to look for when I'm on the barrel pick as well, because I wanna know those are things that I'm gonna be proud of and happy to continue to drink. It doesn't have some off nose. It doesn't have a lacking finish that I wasn't super proud of, and thus other people probably wouldn't be also. There's certain things that I look for, and my hope is that people who like what I like, or people who allow me to pick with them, that there are other people who align with that, and that they'll learn to trust and appreciate, or maybe they just enjoy the same things that I do. If not, well, maybe there's another group out there that picks a different way, that has a profile that they're looking for. That's why I find it important to find a store locally to you, a group locally to you that has picks that you resonate with. I think that means that what they look for in a pick might be things that you look for in a pick. They're things that you can trust. And maybe before you've even figured it out, you'll be able to land with a group who'll be able to help you travel through various pours and figure out, are these the types of profiles that you like, versus maybe another store that just does things a little bit different. And it also makes that magic a little bit more interesting when you can find something, find a product, especially in a time where things are becoming out of control, harder to get pricing out. You can find some staple products and try them from multiple places, get a wide variety of flavor and profiles. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope this was insightful. Again, leave me some comments down below. Let me know what you're looking for in a barrel pick. And when you're on a barrel pick, what's the number one thing that you're hoping for with those barrels? Till next time, everybody, we'll see you all later.